Hey folks, I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Okay. Hey folks, happy Monday, happy Martin Luther King Day, yay! As a reminder, we do not have any type of synchronous class today, but Professor Baird and I are going to be uploading a couple of videos. This is one of them to supplement some of the things we talked about last week, prepare you for the rest of this week, prepare you for next week. So hang tight for that. Professor Baird has a video that is going to walk you through everything to do with your next upcoming assignment down to the smallest detail, so make sure that you are paying close attention to that. And I am going to kind of lead us through a few of the items that we started to talk about last week as we were watching the mime show. And last week, as we started to talk about acting, ask questions about acting and the process and the choices that performers make. But we didn't quite get to cover everything, so I'm going to give us a little bit more. If you want to follow along, feel free to go into Canvas module week 2 and hit the week 2 PowerPoint, and you can see some of this written down as well in bullet points to kind of help you orient yourself in terms of what we've already talked about and what I'm going to talk about today. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about in terms of acting and actors is a particular style of how to present acting. This is the difference between representational and presentational acting. Presentational acting, in its simplest form, is acting that is given directly to the audience. I'm speaking to you right now, talking into the camera. I am doing presentational acting in my costumed role as the course instructor. I am giving you presentational acting right now. I am presenting to you, right? That is one form of acting that we see. We see it in stage, we see it in real life, we see it on YouTube, we see it in film, happens everywhere. And then the second form of acting, and these two are broken down in this way for very specific reasons, the second form of acting that goes with that is representational acting. Representational acting is acting where there is no contact between me, let's say me, the performer, and you, the audience. So it would be like if I was talking, I don't know, to something over there, and I was having this conversation with it, and you just kind of got to watch through the screen because I'm not interacting with you at all. You just happen to be witnessing, let's say I had students over there somewhere. You would get to see me teaching them. You might still learn something, but the action that I'm committing as the performer would be to be teaching those theoretical people over there, not teaching you, the audience. So let's talk about ways to remember that. For me, I feel like every professional out there in the world has to stop for a second and say, is it presentation? Is it representation? Oh, it's that one, right? Because they sound exactly the same. So when I think about it, and I've never met a single person who was just like, oh yeah, it's that one. We all kind of have to take a moment. Presentational acting is giving a presentation. If you're ever wondering, it's literally the same word. You are presenting to the person in front of you. And if we think of examples of this, Shakespeare is notorious for presentational acting. You'll see soliloquies, right? The action of a Shakespeare character going ahead and talking to the audience directly and announcing their feelings to the audience. That's typically presentational acting. And Shakespeare specifically was known for it, where the audience would give something directly. Sometimes we don't see it much in realism, but we do see it a lot in abstract and theater of the absurd. We see direct appeals to the audience. We see it a lot on, modern forms of entertainment such as YouTube and TikTok. We see a lot of that presentational style, but it's exactly the same as if you're in class giving a presentation, giving a final presentation to your class. If you're looking at the person and they're looking back at you and you're addressing them directly, you are presenting the performance and the story to them. That is presentational acting. Versus representational. Representational, think of it's a representation of something. So it's like we're looking in. We are outside, we are separate as the viewer, and we're looking through a window at something that's happening separately from us. We're looking at a representation of a story. So that story is not talking to us, we're not talking to that story, it's doing the thing that it do, and we are going through a process of witnessing it. I always think of representational acting as witnessing the story, because the story doesn't care about us. The story is not talking to us or interacting with us. It is happening on its own. It's like there's a screen between us. And this is one of the places, if not the place, history, ? One of the places where we get the idea of the fourth wall. If you've ever heard of breaking the fourth wall, this idea of representational acting where the proscenium, the place where the curtain would come down between us, the audience, and the performance. That's a fourth wall. It's an invisible wall that says this is the performance, this is the audience, we are separate entities, and that is happening over there and we are happening over here. Breaking the fourth wall, which is a technique that is used deliberately by many contemporary playwrights, is something that happens where the actor exists within that representational scene and then breaks the representation to come and talk to us directly, to break that wall and talk to the audience. So that's like, plays like that are usually like a combination, presentational and representational. So if you are trying to wheel it out in your head, presentational, giving a presentation, eye contact, separate speaking, direct presentation. Representational, a scene is happening and it is happening separate from us. It is being represented before us, we just happen to be watching. And these two things give a different sense of how a performer is going to behave, right? So think through for yourself. What are some moments where you've seen either in film, in theater, anywhere in your life, street fairs, street performers, anybody that you've witnessed? Think about our mime show. Where did you see presentational performing and where did you see representational performing? If you can try to weed that out in your mind, because they are done to very different effects. And the reason that one or the other might be used, somebody might perform the same Shakespeare soliloquy to the audience, or they might perform it as if that person is representationally talking to themselves, right? They could say that same thing, but it's just this inner monologue that we happen to be witnessing, as opposed to it being given directly to us, right? You could do the same thing representationally and presentationally, have it be the exact same text. And usually when we talk about the performer and the actor in terms of how they're engaging with presentational versus representational performance, what that performer's choices are going to be deeply impacted because they are going to revolve around what is my world, right? If my world includes the audience, then I can talk directly to you and I can have this conversation with you, and I'm going to take certain things. I'm going to look down at my notes. I'm going to look over here, but mostly I'm going to be looking at you and I'm pointing at you. I'm pointing at you. It's a very presentational thing. So most of what I'm going to be doing is having this direct impact in the audience where I can make a direct plea. Politicians giving a speech, absolutely presentational acting, no question about it. I had a friend in undergrad who was majoring in theater and politics, and he would always say that he was majoring in lies. And that's respect. Anyway, when we talk about representational acting for a performer, that means that even though the audience is there, right, the audience is always happening, their choices are not reflective of the audience. Their choices of their existence in that moment have to be only reflective of the world that exists for them, the character in the play. So that actor technically has to be aware of, there's the edge of the stage, there's the audience, the mood of the audience, all of that stuff. But in their choices of how to perform, what they're aware of is what's right in front of them, the actual, chair on stage, their acting partner, everything to do with that. And so how they're going to interact with their world of the play, whether or not they're going to interact with the audience at all of those things are going to fall into the realm of whether or not the style is representational or presentational. Traits of presentational acting often include, not always, right? There's no always, there's very little always in the arts. But usually the traits of presentational acting tend to be a little bit more over the top, a little bit more, campy isn't the word that I'm looking for, but putting it outward. We're sending it out into the world. We're presenting. They tend to be heightened, elevated, often associated with elevated language or strange language, often associated with other forms of I gift you with my presence kind of attitude. No, not really. Representational acting, on the other hand, is heavily associated with realism. So this differentiation didn't even used to exist. If you asked Shakespeare, did you write for presentational language with your soliloquies, he would have not understood what you were talking about. Realism kind of hammered home this idea because realism believed we are making exactly the thing, exactly the kitchen, exactly the people in the kitchen, and we are representing that perfectly like it's a little diorama on stage. We are making exactly that and just playing through it as if it has no knowledge that it's a play. It's the real thing. We just put it on a stage. And so that, as realism is end of the 1800s, sort of around the turn of the century, a little bit before the turn of the century. So realism, when realism hits hard, we see playwrights like Ibsen, and I'm going to stop adding extra names that you don't need to know right now. Realism comes in and says there's a real difference between presentational and representational acting, and realism as a genre, as a movement, really believes in representational acting. So these are differences that we started to codify and think about the most in the last century and a half. And before that, nobody would have known what you're talking about if you asked. Think about musicals, right? You can have a lot of times where somebody is standing there and they are belting their solo roughly at the audience. They might not be making eye contact with the audience, but they probably aren't talking to somebody else over here either, right? They're not talking to an acting partner, or if they are, they're still probably cheating their face out to the audience a lot. That is a presentational form of acting without necessarily being a direct soliloquy. Anytime that you've seen someone standing on stage, that's all presentational. Musicals rely heavily on presentational forms of performance. So think about, for your noggin, think about what you saw in the mime show. Were there moments of representational acting, presentational acting? Think about moments like when we had a monkey come up to the actual camera and how they use the camera in different ways, which I just thought was delightful, because to me that is so much of breaking the fourth wall. Think about how they were using the actual equipment that they had, and think about moments that you feel might have been representational or presentational of what they were feeling. Again, representational, generally realistic. If you see something that absolutely could not possibly be real, it's less likely, not 100% unlikely, but less likely that it's going to be a representational format of acting. So let's move along. The next thing we're going to talk about is basically an actor's worksheet, in a way. This is a thing called BOOTS, BOOTS, like the boots on your feet. And it's an acronym, and it stands for biography, objectives, obstacles, tactics, and stakes. And this is basically the rundown of the things that a human is going to need, or a performer is going to need, in order to bring a character to life. These are the things that one would be encouraged to think about, and one would be certain to know about a character before you actually step on stage as that character. There's a bunch of acronyms like this. Different schools use different ones. Way back when I was an undergrad, I remember GOAT sheets, goals, obstacles, actions, tactics, ? My undergrad professors are definitely going to come find me now. Let's make sure they never see this video. But we're going to use BOOTS, all right? BOOTS, biography, objectives, obstacles, tactics, and stakes. These are the types of things that you would want to know before you actually decided to say you were ready to perform a character. You might not know them day one of rehearsal, but you sure as heck would know them by the time that you're going up for an actual performance. So biography. We're going to go through them one by one. Biography is backstory, and it doesn't necessarily have to be detailed, although it can get very detailed. I know we got some cosplayers out there, and I'm sure you know what your characters like eat for breakfast. But it could be, who am I? Where am I? Kind of the basics. Who, what, why am I here? What was I thinking about? What happened right before this might be a good question. Did I just come from somewhere? Am I coming here with an intent or a purpose? Who am I? What biography? What the heck is this person that's coming into this situation? Because we can't illustrate a situation without knowing who that person is within ourselves. And you'll notice a lot of the time when we were watching our mime performers, they had a sense of who I am, who each one of them was, the second that they stepped out there, because they had to use that to help motivate what each thing that they were doing. If they just came out there and were like, I'm a mime person, that might lead to that idea we were talking about of mime block, right? What do I do next? I'm a mime person. Oh God, that's not enough of a character to tell me how I would react to something as that character. So instead we come in with a solid identity, a standing identity of someone who is going to react to things, because reaction is how it all happens. Objectives. Everyone has them. Everybody has objectives. My objective when I pick up this coffee cup is that I'm going to drink the coffee from it. So I have made a physical movement to pick it up, to put it up to my mouth so that I can drink this kind of horrifying coffee. But at the same time, my ulterior objective, because let's be real, most of us have a couple at all times, is to think of something that happened to be nearby to demonstrate to you what an objective is. Every movement has a goal. We hear goals and objectives often used one or the other or together. So if I walk into a room where my ex-partner is, let's say, am I walking in there with the objective to make peace with them? Am I walking in there with the objective to make up with them? Am I walking in there with the objective to get back together with them? Am I walking in there with the objective to make them feel horrible? Or am I walking in there with the objective to start something? These types of questions, right? Everywhere you go and everything you do, if you are moving your body, you have a reason. So something that would motivate, for example, an improvisation scene is knowing, that's that person. I hate that person, but I'm going to try really hard to ignore them so they don't know that they've made me angry and hurt me, because I feel defended, so I don't want them to know that they've hurt me. So my objective is to get past them without them noticing that I'm upset. That's going to make me behave in a certain way. Whereas, what if my objective is I want to walk past them and I want them to know that I'm upset? That's going to make me behave in a completely different way, right? Objective. What are you trying to get out of the situation that you're in? Where are you trying to go? Obstacles. What's in your way? What's in your way? What's in my way to actually drinking this coffee is that I'm trying to talk to you. I'm trying to talk to you, and I've been wanting to drink some of this coffee for the entire time that I've been holding it, but I'm actually looking at this and I'm like, oh, I don't want this video to be longer than 20 minutes, so I'm just going to say, no, I'm going to drink the coffee. That's 2 seconds of your life that you're never going to get back. Mine too. So your objective is always going to be blocked by your obstacle. And we don't exist, and a scene doesn't exist without some kind of obstacle. If my whole goal is to walk past someone who has upset me without them noticing that I'm there, I'm just going to walk past them quietly, and they're not going to notice that I'm there, and that's the end of the story. Was that a good story? Usually something that is not an obstacle to be overcome, then there is no obstacle to be overcome, isn't something that we're going to be making a story about, right? There's not much of a, Frodo took the ring to Mordor and he dropped it in the fires of Mount Doom and nobody tried to stop him. Not a story, right? We want to make sure that obstacles, which are the things that kind of enliven us and force us to become creative, are always there. And a lot of times a performer will become an obstacle for the other performer. We saw that a lot. And think about that in the mime, even just through small movements. You're trying to get across the room and I'm in your way. I just got in your way because I'm being a monkey right now, right? So what is the thing in your way? If the thing in my way from teaching today is that it's Martin Luther King Day, so I'm not going to teach you directly today. The thing in my way of the thing in my way of having something useful to say right now is that my brain just went completely blank. Everything you do has an obstacle. You might have an obstacle in front of you for eating breakfast because you don't have cereal. I don't know. So think about that in terms of any time you see an action started, an acting, an intention started, and something else stands there. And these will always be things that performers are thinking through and directors are thinking through, because each kind of, not necessarily each beat, but definitely each scene, each moment in a production is going to tend to have intention hitting an obstacle. That's how we create tension. That's how we create continued action. If I didn't get it the first time because I got blocked, I got to go this way and try to get it this way. Oops, I'm blocked again, right? That's how we build pieces of stories. Tactics are what things are you doing in order to achieve your objective. So if I want the person that I'm walking past, the theoretical person over there that I'm walking past, to know that I'm upset with them, I'm going to have certain things. I'm going to walk heavier. Maybe I'm going to stomp. Maybe I'm going to slam a door. Maybe I'm going to look at them passive-aggressively and meaningfully. Maybe I'm a mature, healthy adult, and my tactic is going to be that I'm just going to walk up to them and be like, hey, I am upset with you. Who knows? Unlikely, but who knows? Your tactic is how you achieve your objective, and you'll see that in actors too. Did somebody do it through talking? Did somebody do it through moving? Did they do it through a small movement, through a big movement? Did they seem to do it on purpose, or did they just kind of flounder around until they ended up on a tactic? A tactic might not be deliberate, or you might try something and it doesn't work, right? Tactics. How do you get what you want? You have to know that about an actor, and then at the same time, about your character, and then at the same time as an actor, we're also always kind of knowing my tactic, my objective is to give a good performance. My tactic is to know how to act. There's always that meta, right? Everything's a representation of a representation. There's always that sort of meta level of it too. And then stakes. And we always want to remember this, because especially with a scene like that mime scene where it's very small things, right? We see the one performer who's just trying to recite his poetry. He loves his poetry, a dash of Nash. He just wants to say it out loud. And then we have the other performer who's being all the obstacles, right? Who came in and was like the wind or the cold and just like interrupted every line that the poor man who just wanted to say his poetry was saying. So I'm talking, right? That's happening over and over and over. That is objective, say my poem, obstacle. And the tactics to get around that, the tactics for the poet are to wait, take a breath, start again. Oh, I've been blocked again. Wait, take a breath, start again. So we see these tactics. He's going to get his poem out. He's going to tell us. Stakes are the reason why. Stakes are the reason why it's so important for that poor man to just tell us his poem. And stakes could be anything. It could be as small as he just loves that poem and he must share it with us, and that's the most important thing in the world to him. But as we build stakes, what you want to wonder is what does the character have to gain and what does the character have to lose, right? So if I'm walking past my theoretical person over there and the thing I have to gain is what do I want from my life? I don't know. The thing I have to gain is that they have something very precious to me. Let's say that person over there has kidnapped my best friend, right? Okay, we're in a whole different story. I was just cranky with that person, but now we're in like a life and death, like kidnap scenario. I don't know how that happened. I need to drink more of this coffee now. So now my stakes for walking past that person are very, very, very high about how I need to behave around them to get something out of them. I want my friend back, so I need to calculate exactly how I need to behave to make that happen. And I either need them to not see me because I'm trying to hide from them, or I need them, right? Stakes go up. Sometimes a very small stake can be huge. Sometimes a very large stake can be nothing, right? It's not necessarily the magnitude any more than with pain or emotions. There's no absolute sense of magnitude, but there is the sense of how important is this thing to this person right now and why. And understanding that is the most important thing to activate a scene, because if you don't really want the thing that you're striving for, then the audience doesn't really want to watch you try to get it. Right? We need that from the performer. And we want to know how big the stakes are, because usually we would raise them throughout the production, almost get the thing that we need. Oh God, it's even more urgent now. Something else has happened. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger until the climax tends to be the process. Not always, but overall. So if I'm saying, oh, I need to walk past that person, but like they said something mean to me, so I want them to know that I'm cranky about it. Low stakes, right? But it might be the most important thing to me because I'm having that bad a day, right? Whereas fabricated kidnap scenario, the stakes are automatically much higher. And we automatically know there's something going on here. But at the same time, we've been super desensitized to that type of content, right? From all of the different true crime and fiction crime shows and everything else out there. It's like, oh, it's a kidnapping. Oh, well. So there's creating stakes is hard. Knowing stakes, me knowing that I am excited to be here with you talking about acting, usually is something that translates and that comes across. Our stakes and our intentions come across. So when we're thinking about performance, what was the stake for this poor man, right? This poor man trying to tell us his poetry, and he keeps getting blocked. It wasn't super high. He didn't get mad at the wind. He didn't get mad at the other performer. He didn't attack them. He didn't, really start screaming at them until it happened several times. He just, it's not super high, but we know it matters to him, right? And we care along with him. If the performer doesn't care or isn't infusing the actor, or if the actor isn't infusing the character with that much care and passion, we don't go on that trip either. So understanding what we have to gain, I could get this thing back. I could find the love of my life. I could find the buried treasure. I could get this thing that I desperately want, versus understanding what we could lose. I could lose my kidnapped friend. I could lose a friend in a more normal context because I don't make up with them when we argued. I could lose the family fortune. I could lose, fill in the blank, right? What could you gain or what could you lose that are going to affect your sanity, your status quo, all of that stuff? And then what are you striving for, right? So our objective is what we're striving for. The stakes are going to tend to be why. Why do we need that thing? And why do we need it so badly? So those are the things that we are going to talk about today. That is sort of a cap on all of our conversations about acting, at least for the moment. Make sure you're also watching Professor Baird's video, which will walk you through every single thing you need to know about your upcoming assignment. And reminder, we will have our very first in-person class, I believe, next Monday, and we will see your faces there. Goodbye.